Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be the last video of this mini series kind of a thing that we are doing. So in this video, we promise to try to set up a circular replication. So circular replication, as I explained in the last videos, ending that circular replication is when this master replicates to this slave, which is it's currently doing already, but then we also want to replicate data changes from here back to this master, right? So this kind of creates this circular replication that this master replicates to this slave, and that this slave is also going to be a master on its own and is going to replicate back to this slave, this master, which is indirectly a slave of this node. So they are both masters and slave at the same time. All right. So as you can see that we have this replication running right now, where we have one master and one slave is the same setup that we have been using so far. And this master status is currently showing, or rather the GTID status as of now is showing that we have a slave position that is something different from the server 2000, and the domain ID is using is still the same 10 dash, right? So domain ID 10 is still the same for both of these machines. But to be able to do a circular replication, or in general when you have multiple master replicating to the same slave, right, so we need to make sure that our domain ID is different so that it doesn't create any transactional conflicts or GTID based conflicts. So what we're going to do is we are going to open this second machine and we are going to edit the server.cnf file, scroll down all the way, and we know that the domain ID for the first node is 10. We already know that. So this one we are just going to change to 20, right? So just to have something different. The rest everything should remain the same, no changes at all. So I'm going to save and exit and simply restart this MariaDB server. All right. So restart is done and everything looks okay. Let me just double confirm that my max scale is not going to mess up with anything in terms of automatic promotion and all that, because yeah, so is there. I think it should be all right. We can still leave it as it is. Let's leave it as it is. We don't really need to do anything here. So let's leave it to auto failover and auto rejoin. We are not going to restart any server, so it's fine. All right. So let's connect to MariaDB servers here, and this one is already connected. So now by right, since this is a slave, right? So this slave is basically a read-only slave, and we are using root user, select user. And so what we are going to do is the first thing that we have to do is set read only equals to off. Right? So we need to set this read only equals to off. We don't want max scale or this server basically in a read only mode, right? So yeah, it should be global indeed. So set global read only equals to off. So, okay, so this is currently read only, no more read only. It can be read and write both. All right, so now that we have multiple domain IDs, right? So what we expect to do right now is, let's say, show databases, test db2. Let's create this database and then see the replication is still working. Yes, it's working. And for databases, if you see the databases here, we can see that yes, replication is working fine. Now let's try to do a transaction from this particular server, right? So that's something that we'll have to do in order to initiate the first GTID on this particular node, because currently this particular node does not have any transaction ID. So if we do GTID, if we check that, then this GTID, the slave position and also the current position are referring back to the wrong domain ID, which is something that we don't really want. So we want to initiate GTID that is matching this particular server, right? So let's do that very quickly. It's a slave, we know that, but we don't really care right now because we have already set the domain ID to be different, right? So in that case, and also we have set the read only to off, right? So because we have already set the domain ID to a different number, global like GTID domain ID. Let's check that. We know that this is 20. So the next transaction that we do should have a GTID starting with 10 with 20-2000-1 because it's going to be the first ever transaction of that domain ID. So let's do that. New domain. I'm just creating some random database here, right? So now you see what happens here. On the slave is reporting that we now have a new GTID, right? So we now have a new GTID. So we are basically now going to see multiple streams of transaction ID, two different domains generating GTIDs. And now what we can do is we need to run change master command. And then before we do that, we need to do a set global GTID slave position equals to, what we need to do is we are going to copy this entire GTID here, right? And then we are going to say that this is going to be your current GTID. So even better way would be to do to check the GTID status and check the current position here, and then append it with the this GTID that is generated by that node. So that's something that we'll do. Let's try that. Set global position equals to, so we'll pick up the current position, whatever your current position, comma, no space, and then we'll copy the GTID from this. Okay, let's say we don't have max scale at all. Yeah, we'll just pick up that, and then we are going to take the GTID current position of this one, right? So let's put that here. Okay, so this is set properly, and then we can see indeed that GTID is now reflecting properly, right? And now we'll do the change master. So change master to master host. Now we are saying that, hey, your master is going to be this particular node, right? So this particular IP is going to be your new master. So even though this is currently a master on its own, but we are telling this guy to get new data as a slave from this new master. And then of course the master use GTID is we are telling it to use the slave position. So this is an important step here, to set the current GTID to use the new GTID generated by the second server. So we have already done that. So let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. And if we do start slave, we would see that now it's showing this guy is a relay master for this particular node, right? And this is a normal master to this node, but this guy is a relay master for this particular server. What is a relay master? That means that whatever this node is slave, so it's getting transaction through relay. So whenever it's getting some data, is going to record them or send them through a relay to this particular master. So yeah, it's circular master, different terminology, relay master. So yeah, that's it. So if I do show databases, we can see that we have everything here, but the only problem is that the new database that we created here is not really replicated back to that node, because that particular transaction already generated this GTID, right? So already generated this GTID, and that GTID was not replicated properly because it's already there. And then we are saying that I want you to start from this GTID as already received and start receiving next transaction after this GTID. So that is why this GTID represents that new database. So let's try one more thing. Let's do one more thing. Stop slave. Let's stop this slave. Okay, so this thing goes back to normal. And then we are going to set the global GTID slave position to just this, right? So we are just going to set it to this number. So let's do that. And then start slave. Okay. So now you see that after setting the GTID to only that number, we actually got that additional transaction on this particular node. So we have received that. So if I do the show databases now, I should have that new domain database here, right? So that basically means that the mistake we have done earlier on by setting the wrong GTID, we fixed it by just simply setting the GTID to its base GTID and then pointing the master to this IP, to this server's IP, and it automatically identified all the new GTIDs that are being generated here and start pulling those transactions. So instead of creating any confusion, that's how it is. So now if I do drop database new domain, we can see that this GTID moved from 975 to 976, also replicated. And if we do show databases now, we can see that database is gone. If I drop this SB test2 database or testdb2 database from here, testdb2, this should generate a second GTID here on this server. And if I do show databases here, we should see that the test db2 is gone. So which means that basically means that the replication is working two-way, right? So that's what we want to see. So now let's do something interesting. We have sysbench installed on both of these machines, right? So I am going to just simply run that sysbench for maybe let's do that for 60 minutes here. And this one is going to push data to this 74 host, which is this one. And from here, I am going to run this again for maybe 60 minutes, also 60 seconds, not minutes. And this is going to send data to this host. So which means that both of these are, this one is sending data to this master and this one is sending data to this master. So they are basically pushing some transaction or simulating workload on both of these masters. That we should see the GTID is moving, both of these GTIDs moving on all the servers. So which means that the replication, two-way replication is going to be working well. So I'm going to enable broadcasting. So when I press enter, it enters on both of these servers. Let's see. Okay. So I see something, some problem happening here. The transaction was not executed, or this guy is not able to execute. Let me cancel this one, and then we will see very quickly what exactly is going on. Let's disable that. Let's run it for one more time. Is the user correct and the password is correct? Yes, the password looks okay to me. The user also looks all right to me. Yeah, SB user. Okay, let's try that one more time. Okay, so let's check what might be happening. So this is sending data to this particular server. Okay, show global variables like read only, let's say. Okay, that's the problem. I think it's because this max scale is max scale is enforcing read only on this particular node, right? So we'll have to remove that read only, enforcing read only on the max scale. But yeah, in order to get it working. So let's do that very quickly. I'll show you where it is. Just edit the config file, and then under the monitor, it will show you under this MariaDB monitor, right? It's showing us this enforce read only true. So I'm just going to disable that line, save and exit, and restart max scale. So that's that, and watch it. And on this node, I'm going to set it to, because this as an environment, the read only is still set, right? So I'm just going to say set global read only equals to off. And So I'm just going to set it to off. So it's no longer read only. All right. So now if I do this, it should work. Yeah, it's working. So that's the main problem, because the slave, or rather that node was in read only mode. So that's why the 6-bench user was not able to do any writing. But because we were using root user, we could still do create database and all that stuff. But 6-bench user doesn't have full privileges. Okay, so now let's do this one. So this one pushes data to 74, and this one pushes data to 73 for 60 seconds. And I'm going to enable that broadcasting one more time so that we press enter for both of these at the same time. Okay, so they are both generating data to each other, and then we should be able to see replication working both ways, right? So from this server to this server also flowing, from this server to this server is also flowing, and there you have it. Two-way replication working fine without any problems, without any troubles, because we have distinct domain IDs set for both of these machines. But there can be still one problem if somehow they are both trying to attack the same data, or maybe update or delete, or maybe insert the same primary keys for the same on the data. So those are things that we will need to take care in our application level. So just to make sure that we don't, meaning from these two sides, we don't really work on the same record ever. So that's something that we still have to control through your application layer. Or maybe this thing can be, maybe you have two different databases on both of these servers, and then you can push transaction, or each of the apps is actually connected to one of those databases, right? So from this node we are connected to database A, from this node we are connected to database B. So in this way they will never be affecting each other, right? So we can do that one more time. Everything looks okay, there's no issues at all. We can see the GTIDs, all the 4 GTIDs or 4 records are moving in the same way, in synchronous way. So everything looks okay. If we connect to MariaDB and GTID, if we check that GTID values, and then we can see indeed that we now have a mix of 2000, 10 2000, 10 1000, and 20. So this is the new one. So this sequence is the new one, of course, but this one is the old old GTIDs that we had earlier with the domain ID 10 for server ID 2000 for this server. But now this server ID or this server is actually using a different domain ID 20. Right? So this should be the valid domain ID now. All right. Yeah. So that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed it and you guys learned something new during these 3 videos. So this was all about GTID, how to read this GTID information, bin log position, current position, domain IDs, and slave position, right? So these are all important concepts. When do we use slave IDs, slave position? When do we use current positions? And what exactly is this one? And what do you mean by the bin log IO position when you do show? So now something interesting, when we do the show slave status \G, we should see slave status on both of these machines. Because why? Because both of these are masters and slave to each other as well. So that is exactly why we call it a circular replication. And then we can see the GTID is also reporting the same GTID for both of these machines, right? But the only difference would be the host here. This one is a slave of 73, while this one is a slave of 74. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys. Good luck with your future in MariaDB, and hope you guys had a great Chinese New Year. Take care. Bye bye.